Hi, and welcome everybody to the ArchiMentors Summit 2021, where our goal is to inspire you and educate you through sharing amazing journeys, expertise, lessons learned, career advice, and so much more from our amazing speakers. My name is David Drazil. I'm the founder of sketchlikeanarchitect.com, and I'm the organizer and host of this whole virtual summit. And today it's my great pleasure to talk to Sarah Lebner, who is an award-winning principal architect at the multidisciplinary firm Lighthouse Architecture and Science. And she's also the author of the book called 101 Things or 101 Things I Didn't Learn in Architecture School. And she's also the founder of myfirstarchitecturejob.com. So please give a warm welcome to Sarah Lebner. Hey, Sarah, it's so great to have you here.
Thanks, David. It's really exciting to be here.
It's really our pleasure. I've said a lot of things about you because you are so busy and productive person. And I know we'll be talking a lot more about your journey, maybe also about career advice, about my first architecture job. Maybe it will be amazing presentation of yours. So what can people be looking forward to?
Well, today what I'm hoping to do is share 10 ways that people can place themselves for a lucky career. I thought about calling it 10 ways to be in the right place at the right time as well. So that's the theme of the talk today.
That's perfect. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. Please, the stage is yours. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, David. So I'll just recap, as David mentioned, I'm the principal architect at a unique interdisciplinary firm in Canberra, Australia, called Lighthouse Architecture and Science. I'm the author of 101 Things I Didn't Learn in Architecture School and Wish I'd Known Before My First Job. I'm the founder of My First Architecture Job website, and we'll have more on some freebies on that later on. And last year, I had the honour of being awarded the Australian Institute of Architects National Emerging Architect Prize. And as part of winning that prize, a short video was produced about my origins and my motivations as an architect. And as a way of introducing myself today, I'd like to share that video with you now, and then we'll jump into talking about 10 ways that I think you can build a career that's been as lucky as mine. This is the Upper Murray in the Snowy Valleys. It's Ngurrago country. It's man from Snowy River country. It's where I grew up and where my family is soon returning to. On the farm, Mother Nature is profound. Seasons are lived, resources are tangible. Climate change and human impact is evident. The path of the sun is ingrained in your psyche. When I dream at night, I know which way north is. I'm not kidding. Our farm runs the width of the valley, which is oriented north to south. The change in sunrise and sunset angles throughout the year is obvious. The hills either side cast long shadows that exaggerate seasonal changes. My family take pride in resourcefulness and despise wastefulness. My dad built these stables. Everything you see is salvaged. Every piece has a history. Trusses from their first cottage home, timber slab walls from a long abandoned slab hut. Even the latches are made from old horseshoes. On the land, the plants and animals don't care who you are or what you know. They only react to what you do. It's easy to find yourself, harder to lie to yourself. It's unavoidable to live the results of your actions. Out here, you're a tiny part of a huge functioning ecosystem. Yet, if you want to change anything, it's up to you to be that change. As an architect, I am a tiny part of a huge functioning ecosystem. There's things I'd like to see change. So every day, I try to be the change I want to see. In our new suburbs, the seasons are much less lived. The path of the sun is often forgotten. These northern facades could be windows with eaves, automatically shaded in summer and with sun flooding the extent of the rooms during frosty Canberra winters. New houses in Canberra are the biggest in Australia and therefore practically the world. Let that sink in. How can we despair about the cost of building, build quality or energy efficiency while building the biggest new houses in the world? But let's not sit back as architects and point fingers. Let's take some responsibility. Let's engage in a genuine way. Let's be the change we want to see. Architects are professionally trained problem solvers, yet we don't usually see ourselves that way, and neither do the public. I'm the principal architect at Lighthouse Architecture and Science. We're a multidisciplinary firm of architects and scientists, led by a director who is a building scientist. I met Glenn Murcutt as a student, and he said to me that he never set out to be extraordinary or do extraordinary things. He just wanted to do simple things extraordinarily well. This struck a deep chord with me. There's a lot of poorly considered and executed cheap housing. There's also a lot of really brilliant, bigger budget architectural homes. I'm fascinated by the gap in the middle. My practice of architecture has largely pursued the question of how we close the space between these two. We can't begin without being informed. We've researched the project home industry, collected costing data, simulated thermal performance on each of our projects, and physically tested and tracked them as built. This research and evidence is treated as a tool used to inform a holistic and critical design approach. In some ways, it's about combining intelligence and simplicity. But that's just step one. What change are we really achieving by helping a handful of clients one-on-one every year? To be the change we want to see, we have to communicate effectively, in a language the public and the industry understands. We have to turn up with the data. We have to open doors for people to experience something better. And we have to engage in a sincere manner. I believe there's also immense opportunity to better prepare our future architects for these challenges. Last year, I self-published a book, 101 Things I Didn't Learn in Architecture School. It's like a handbook for being a young architect in Australia. This led to a resource website, myfirstarchitecturejob.com, and then a membership platform called The Architect Project. Instead of waiting to build knowledge working as a graduate in an isolated firm, members can more effectively bridge the gap between study and practice, learning from architects, consultants and trades from across Australia. I've learned to stop prioritising trying to know it all and instead prioritise collaboration and meaningful networks that provide valuable collective knowledge. So what's my message to young architects? Engage in a manner that is sincere, humble and collaborative. And ask yourself, what can you see that you want to change? thanks for taking the time to watch that video. I hope you feel like you know me a little bit better now. And if you're wondering, I had a little girl and she's almost 6 months old now. So a couple of years ago, I was speaking about how my career had developed so far and what I had achieved. And when questioned about some of the key moments, my response included a phrase that many of us use throughout our career. And I said, well, I was in the right place at the right time. And there's various versions of this statement, like I was the only person available with the right experience, or very commonly, I was lucky. And at that particular presentation, one of the attendees called me out on it, and they said, look, you said you were lucky, but I'm sure there were actions that you've taken in your career that led to that lucky situation and the ability to grasp it. And that question really haunted me for a while. So when I was asked to prepare a presentation on this general topic for this ArchiMentors Summit, it forced me to think a lot more about this, because I thought if I can distill some tips here, it might be really useful for other emerging architects. So I've hazarded a guess at 10 tips or suggestions. And let me go ahead and share my screen and run you through those now. So how do you build a career that puts you in the right place at the right time? How do you create your own luck? The thing that I've done or observed that probably helped build the career I've had so far, and how can you do it too? We're going to start with some basic advice that you might have heard before, and then we're going to move into some more unique tactics. So number one is to network. And you probably knew I was going to say this one. It's a pretty obvious one. Every architecture job that I have had has been found through building good relationships and calling on them when it was the right time to. Yet no matter how much we tell each other to network, it clearly remains challenging for many people. And I continue to see young architects who really don't know how to network beyond perhaps a sort of cliche vision of sauntering up to someone in a suit and giving them a business card. So to network, you simply foster and build relationships wherever you can. So when I say I've used or found opportunity through networks, the networks that I'm referring to came from the following examples. So being respectful and engaged with a university tutor, confiding in a trusted co-worker about the type of job I really wanted, intentionally choosing which architect to interview for a uni project, generally being positive and engaging and helpful to builders, architects, or peers that I've been in conversation with, joining and taking part wherever you can and trying to remember the names of people involved, learning about what they do, asking them questions, connecting online, engaging with the social media posts of those you want to build a connection with, buy someone a coffee or lunch in exchange for their time. As I always say, everyone eats at some stage, and most people enjoy conversation and the flattery that comes from being asked for advice. And it doesn't just go one way. Sharing generously will also open up networks as you invite others to connect with you. And you'll see at the bottom of these points, I've put a little challenge that I'm hoping you can engage with. So the first challenge is, can you think of one action you can take today to foster a new network or relationship? And I believe there's a chat for these events. So I'd love to see some people popping their answers to these challenges in the chat as we go through. So this sort of leads to my second point, which is to join existing networks. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here, and you don't have to do these things alone. There's so many fantastic existing networks and resources around us. So your own national architecture institution will likely have student and graduate branches. That's a great place to start. And there's likely other groups. For example, in Australia, we have the Association of Consulting Architects, ArchiTeam, the National Association of Women in Construction, and the Building Designers Association of Australia. You can join architecture clubs at university. You can join local arts and crafts associations or not-for-profit community associations, things like Architects Without Borders, or even online communities like the one I run, the Architect Project. I'll tell you more about that later. The list is endless, and simply joining these existing networks and turning up and getting involved will help any career. It's really easy to think when you're sometimes involved in these things. You might be on a committee, for example, and you might think, wow, these committee meetings are really boring and I'm wasting my time listening to that old guy rambling on and they're just using me for this skill that I have. But that's the wrong attitude to turn up with. I bet at the same time that you would have met some new movers and shakers. You probably learned more about the industry. You probably had the opportunity to get involved more. In fact, the person who first asked me to present on this topic is someone who I properly met through being on chapter council at our local Australian Institute of Architects. And as an example, our respect and knowledge for each other was really bolstered by me contributing to a project that she was leading in a forum. So if you really don't know how to take that first step, ask someone you know if they can help you get involved, or honestly, even just email the network and explain who you are and ask how you can best get involved. So in summary, there's a few places there that you can go to look, and the challenge is, what kind of group or project could you join? Number 3 is to follow your interests. In my membership platform, the Architect Project, we host guest architects and industry professionals every fortnight, and they pass on their knowledge and advice to our student and graduate members. And one of the most interesting insights has been that every guest that has a highly successful career has found their path essentially by following their interests and being open to experiences and opportunities that happened along the way. None of them had any kind of grand vision or roadmap of where they were heading towards. They just opened themselves up to those opportunities and followed their interests. And I think that's advice that is both encouraging and a relief for young architects. So you don't have to know what path you want to follow, just follow your interests and ask yourself what those interests might be proactive about pursuing them. So with the point above, when I'm hammering in this message to network, I'm not telling you to face it as some kind of chore or to join something you're not interested in. If you follow your natural interests and skills, the rest will fall into place eventually. And the challenge is, can you define 2 to 3 interests that you can actively pursue and then revisit the previous points in light of that? Number 4, take people off their pedestals. I remember when I was at university in my earlier years, I didn't think I should go to the National Architecture Conference because I thought I was just a student and what would I know? And ridiculously, I somehow felt that all the serious architects would sort of find me out and shun me somehow. But then I won a free ticket. So I went along with my friend for moral support, and I realized how ridiculous I had been. Firstly, you do not have to qualify yourself to attend any kind of architecture event. No one even really cares whether you're a student or an award-winning architect. And secondly, I'm yet to attend a presentation that's gone over my head. Maybe that's a lie. I did see a philosopher once who he talked about an hour about toilets, I think, that went over my head, but it still would have. And thirdly, most architects love helping out anyone who turns up with an interest to learn more. So once I worked this out, I attended events as often as I could. They are an incredible source of inspiration, energy, networking, and brain food. But there was still a point until recently where I would probably avoid any architect that I sort of knew about. The local Emerging Architect Prize winners were sort of like celebrities to me for years. And then as my experience grew, they weren't so scary, but the national winners were. And even when I started the Architect Project a year ago, I was too scared to invite them on. But last year I was awarded the National Emerging Architect Prize, and my reaction was probably a common one. The first thoughts are sort of, are you sure? Have I just fooled them by writing a really good submission? And are the previous winners going to realize that I don't deserve to join their club? And then I sort of slapped myself around the face and told myself that I was deserving and that the other winners were probably just as human as me, just bumbling along in life, having a go and making it up along the way. Since winning, I've reached out to a few past winners and, you know, I wouldn't even say they've been generous with their time. I'd simply say that they share my interest in good conversation, sharing ideas and bettering the profession. So I'm not saying be disrespectful or cocky as a young architect, but don't view anyone as superhuman or out of your league. Just put your best foot forward, smile, and say hello. So the summary tips there: don't hold yourself back. Don't wait for an invitation. See everyone as human, just like you. And the challenge, can you think of an event or interaction that you've held yourself back from for these reasons? And can you revisit that opportunity and action it now? Number 5 is to spend time with the kind of people you want to be. So Jim Rohn said, you are the average of 5 people you spend the most time with, which I think is interesting. We are becoming increasingly aware of the power of the circles that we hang out in, particularly in this social media age, as it divides us into pockets that reaffirm our own biases. And I believe the same is true in your career. So though I think if you're not hanging out with the kind of people you want to be, you don't necessarily turn into the other kind. You just end up miserable and hating the profession. So, I mean, there are a few architecture friends I know I can call on for a catch up when I need to re-energize my vision or to brainstorm industry concerns or seek feedback that's in line with how I feel. And when you find people like this and identify them within your friendship or professional circle, it can be really valuable. A larger example comes of this comes from when I was first thinking about writing my book, 101 Things I Didn't Learn in Architecture School. I have a bit of an addiction to entrepreneurship and business podcasts. And through listening to them, I had an idea about how I would self-publish it and I would build an online authority voice and I would market to that community. But sharing even that first step of my plan out loud with local friends and family and colleagues was really nerve-wracking. I would sort of mention it very casually, joking that maybe it wouldn't eventuate so as not to be too hurt by their likely skepticism. But inside, my intent definitely wasn't casual. I knew I was going to do it. So facing the task surrounded by voices that didn't really get it would have been almost impossible. But because I was listening to those podcasts, following others who had done similar things and joining Facebook groups really normalized the whole idea for me to the point where it just seemed so ridiculously achievable. So this was a really big lesson for me. If you want to achieve something, find other people who've done similar things and keep them in your ears as much as possible. So in summary, find your people, seek out people who have done what you want to do. And then there's a little list of the kinds of places where you might find your people there. And the challenge is simply thinking about where might your people be and what knowledge circles do you need to find. Number 6 is to know your pitch. You put the things that I've already talked about into place, you need to be ready to talk about yourself. And this is a pretty intimidating prospect for many, and I acknowledge that communication perhaps doesn't come as naturally or confidently to many of you as I'm lucky it does come to me. But even as a confident speaker, I've still had to work at this skill. I think it's really funny that we seek schooling on the hard skills we want to have, like our architecture training or a drafting course, but often we just accept our soft skills as a set part of our personality. And it really doesn't have to be that way. Even as an outgoing person, I've done a few workshops on public speaking and influential leadership. And I always learn something really useful and leave feeling more confident in my communication and presentation skills. A key communication skill for building your career is knowing your elevator pitch. This is a short statement about yourself that you've practiced and can easily roll off your tongue when someone asks you about yourself. So I'd suggest that young architects have a few different versions that they practice out loud so that they don't freeze when they get that opportunity to connect. It's also great if you have prepared a friendly call to action. So if you're job seeking as a student, a simple example might be, "Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a third-year student. I came tonight because I'm really interested in the topic of sustainability and I'm looking for a job. So it's nice to meet other people with similar interests." That's a pretty comfortable thing to say, and you're still putting your job seeking ambitions out there. If you're a graduate and you're discreetly sort of looking for opportunities because you don't want to let your current employer know that you're looking, your pitch could be something more like, "Nice to meet you. I'm James. I've been with ABC Architects for a few years, and I'm increasingly interested in innovative models for medium density housing. So I came along tonight to try and meet others who might be working in this area." Even if you're not job seeking, knowing how to speak about your current workplace with clarity and pride so that you become a valuable business representative is really worthwhile. So be ready to talk about yourself and your practice, develop your elevator pitch, pursue training if you need to in presentation skills and public speaking. And you might feel like a bit of a fraud practicing these scripts behind the scenes, but you need to change that feeling of sort of cheating into realizing that instead you're being proactive, taking initiative and working on self-improvement, which are all really top qualities that employers are looking for and value. So the challenge for this one is to write a few sentences to practice before going to your next event. Number 7 is to seek opportunity in everything. So I guess similarly, this can feel sort of cunning or calculating, but again, remind yourself that seeking opportunity is a strength, not a weakness. In my 3rd year at university, a local architect gave us a university lecture, and not long after we were set the task of interviewing a local architect. And I knew this was a great opportunity to seek a quality introduction to a potential employer. So I reached out to that guest lecturer and was careful to conduct my interview with him in a way that demonstrated some personal qualities as a potential employee. And when I mentioned I was looking for opportunities, he did follow up by offering me a job. When I was asked to speak on this topic in a private presentation prior to this event, I saw that I thought, well, this must be something that young architects want to hear about. So, down the track, I'll probably convert this material into an article and make use of that and share it more widely. One of the points in my book is to make the most of being naive, and it's one of my favorite points. And what I mean by that is use educational opportunities as personal opportunities. So for example, if you're going for registration and you're lacking experience in a certain area, perhaps you could ask your boss if they would mind you doing a few voluntary hours a week off the clock with another architect who does work in that area. What an incredible way to broaden your own skills and knowledge that you couldn't do if you were more experienced and didn't have that sort of reason to be seeking that experience and education. And I'll say it one more time. Remember that seeking opportunity isn't selfish or self-serving. You are creating opportunity and improving your skills so that you are more able to serve the people that you want to serve and achieve your mission to improve the built environment and change people's lives. So think about what you want to get out of an event or conversation before it happens. Use projects and training as networking opportunities. Make the most of being naive and repurpose content and learning. Share your knowledge. The challenge is what's coming up on your calendar or to-do list that you can identify as a further opportunity. Number 8 is pretty simple. It's to ask. So we've been talking about networking and creating those opportunities for life to throw you a bone, but you also shouldn't be afraid of asking for that bone. One of the more well-intentioned and caring bosses I've had once said to me, "Take care of yourself, Sarah, because no one else will." And perhaps if that comment had come from someone a bit more negative or ruthless, I would have just thrown it away. But the fact that it came from quite a generous and optimistic person made it really stick with me. I realized that even well-intending individuals are mostly just thinking about themselves and their own concerns and only see the surface of who you are and what you want. So for that reason, people probably don't know what you want unless you put it out there. We've done a few coaching sessions at our workplace focused on different personalities and working together. And I'm always amazed by how different people are in regards to what motivates them, how they like to receive recognition, or what they want to achieve. So we need to remember that in the same way that others want very different things from us, people don't necessarily know what we want. And if you can find a way to be conscious of that in your communications and actions, people around you can better understand that and they can pass opportunities on to you or information or support you along the way. In the Architect Project, we recently did a guest session with Rachel Bairnstone. She's an architecture and marketing expert and founder of Sounds Like Design. And she had a great piece of advice, which was to add a call of action to all of your interactions, just like you would in marketing material. So we have short attention spans these days and we all keep scrolling. So it doesn't hurt to invite people to, for example, take an action like checking out your website or inviting them for a coffee sometime in the future, or asking if they could share something that they mentioned in a follow-up email. So add a call to action to your communication. Know what you might ask in conversation with a peer or at an event. Speak up about your goals or what you need. And no one is going to ask for you. It's up to you to take action on the kind of career that you want for yourself. And the challenge is to think of one ask that you can action in your posts, conversations, or at work. Number 9 is to be open to criticism. So I've been reflecting on this one recently because this one's much easier said than done. We all love hearing positive feedback, but there's a lot to be gained from constructive criticism. And this kind of feedback or questioning can be hard to take when we hold our own insecurities on the topic. So before winning the National Emerging Architect Prize, it was really easy to doubt the work I was doing, which meant that sometimes I had a defensive voice in my head because I was trying to encourage myself to keep going. And when you're then faced with criticism, be it constructive or not, it's easy for that defensive voice to be the default response. And on top of this, architecture school, I think sometimes is 5 years of training on how to be defensive. We're taught to defend all of our actions and ideas and choices. So being awarded that prize and being recognised by peers at such a high level has quite intensely changed the narrative in my head. And as my work feels quite validated now, I'm finding it quite freeing in my ability to welcome criticism and feedback. And being able to do that has allowed me to accept and take on board some valuable thoughts from others. So how do we open ourselves to better receiving criticism when we're battling our own internal securities? I don't really know the answer to that one, but I suspect one answer could be training ourselves to remember that constructive criticism is an objective take on our work or actions. It's not a personal attack. So maybe if we can consider that criticism in some kind of, neutral space that's not connected to us, we can respond in a more useful way. Google also tells me that another tactic is to ask questions and seek further insight into the criticism before jumping into being defensive. So ask questions to find out what you can learn and gain from the feedback. And one of my most recent lessons in self-reflection and humility has come from an excellent book called Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erickson. And if you haven't read it, I would really encourage you to read it for a really healthy dose of feedback on your own personality and actions, as well as useful advice on how to interact with others. So recognize the value in criticism, even if it hurts. Try to be curious rather than defensive. Show up with unconditional positive regard. Remember that you are not your work. And there's that book recommendation there. So a challenge is to identify a time when you received criticism and ponder whether there could be any value for you to take away in that opinion. The final point, drum roll here. Number 10, work out how to turn no into yes. So we all experience opportunities that we feel we can't take on, or we hold ourselves back from taking the next step in our career because we don't think we're quite ready. And I think there's a lot to be said for being more conscious and proactive about how to change that. When a major restructure of the firm that I work with saw my architect director resign in order to pursue a career as a builder, and the most obvious person to step into his shoes was me. But I really didn't have the technical skills and experience to replace him. But when my director asked if I would step into the principal architect role, I knew it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. So while I didn't have enough experience architecturally, I did thankfully have the personal soft skills to make it work. So we negotiated that the original director would remain available for mentoring on certain projects. I helped our team work more collaboratively, which unlocked a lot of complementary skills to support each other. And I started a monthly-ish forum where we would invite other local architects or allied professionals to join us for lunch, and we could pick their brain and share knowledge. We even formally engaged a mentoring external architect when we identified a shortfall in knowledge on a particular project. I also made myself ask a lot of dumb questions on site with builders to fill in the knowledge gaps that I had. So we get all this fantastic problem solving training at university, and I think we can use that in our career to eliminate barriers. Work out what you need to be qualified or comfortable taking an opportunity that's given and seek that out. You don't have to be everything, and often being good at finding answers is more valuable than knowing the answers. So the challenge is, can you preempt an upcoming challenge or opportunity and identify skills or resources that you can seek out now to be more prepared? So in summary, at the end of the day, I think pure talent and natural intelligence, they're undoubtedly a head start to success. But if you can approach your career like an architecture project, you can use those problem solving skills and critical thinking that we're taught as designers at university to build this lucky career and to increase your opportunity of being in the right place at the right time, and then be able to say yes when you get there. If you're interested in knowing more, I would love you to check out my book, 101 Things I Didn't Learn in Architecture School and Wish I'd Known Before My First Job. David's going to supply a link, I believe, for people to purchase this book. And David runs this fantastic event quite selflessly. So please use his affiliate link as a small way to say thanks. And I also have a website called myfirstarchitecturejob.com, which has a free job seeker workbook, talks you through the process of job seeking and some tips, whether that's your first job or moving on to your second job, and a lot of fantastic articles there. You can join our newsletter to get updates. I don't send a lot of newsletters, but it's a nice way to stay across everything. I also have a workbook there on preparing for architecture interviews and a portfolio and resume creation guide. And finally, if you're based in Australia, I would really love you to check out my membership program, which is called the Architect Project. And it's all about helping students and graduates achieve employment, promotion, and registration sooner and with more confidence and impact. And again, we're running a bit of a offer just for you guys attending ArchiMentors. So if you come check us out and complete your free trial and then mention this talk, then I would love to instantly share access to 5 of the session replays from year 1. We've just started year 2. And for example, here's some of the amazing people that we have had in year 1. I feel so lucky hosting these people. And you can see we've covered everything from sustainability consultants to how architects charge fees, to detailing wall systems, to career progression and future-proofing careers. So thanks for listening through all my self-promotion there. And I'll leave this page up at the end to help you find what you're looking for. So thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been incredibly useful presentation with so many tips. I loved it. I made a lot of notes myself. And for everyone watching, find these links below or next to this video. Everything is linked because Sarah is so generous in many ways. Make sure to check her out, reach out to her on Instagram, on her website, check out her membership, and just get in touch and be a little bit more proactive in your networking activities.
Thank you. And I put that final question there just to leave people thinking, what can you do today to increase your opportunity for a lucky career? And I'd love to see some of people's answers in the chat. I know this is pre-recorded, but I'm really hoping to be there and in the conversation because that's the fun of this. So hopefully you'll see me pop up there, and I'd love to hear people's answers.
So yes, please do reach out and connect in the chat. Let us know what are your next steps when it comes to networking, when it comes to job seeking. Join the challenges, the many challenges that were on every point on the presentation of Sarah's. And also just let us know what's your key takeaway from this whole talk. You can do it in the chat under this video. You can do it in our private Facebook group, where Sarah is also very welcome to join and interact with you guys.
I'll be there.
You can also reach out to her on her Instagram. So many ways how to interact, how to get in touch, how to get the most out of this ArchiMentor Summit, because except many other things, it's also a networking opportunity for you all attendees and speakers to connect and just squeeze this opportunity. Sarah, I want to thank you so much for putting out super generous and real life inspired presentation from your experience. And I can definitely second all the points because I can really see and feel how they are lived. They are not something that anyone can read in different pamphlets and books, but it's something that you live through and you kind of learn from. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I love sharing it all. And yeah, I'm really excited to see all of the other speakers as well. So it's just awesome to be part of something like this.
It's our great pleasure. I would have a few follow-up questions. I made a lot of notes from your presentation, and I noticed a few topics which were kind of coming back related to your tips. And you talked about imposter syndrome, and you kind of encouraged a lot of people to step out of their comfort zone when presenting themselves, when preparing a pitch, when preparing for the upcoming event. It takes a solid chunk of bravery and maybe self-reflection, a lot of these self-awareness games that are really important for our self-improvement. And even though it's a lot of self word, you were so right about it's not actually being selfish when you are trying to better yourself, to help other people, to better serve other people.
Yeah.
Would you have any tips, or maybe just tell us about how you tackle the imposter syndrome and how you inspire and motivate yourself to step out of your comfort zone even today?
Yeah. I've got a couple of ideas. What immediately comes to mind is a lesson in high school that I've never forgotten, actually, from our English teacher. And she drew this little circle on the board, if you say this is the circle, and she said, this is your comfort zone right now. And she said, you know, these are all the things that you're comfortable doing. And increasingly, you know, there'll be little opportunities and travel trips and events that will be outside. And once you do this thing here, your comfort circle grows to include that thing. And then you do something else a little bit uncomfortable and it grows. And I guess she was just trying to tell us that the more we inched out of our comfort zone and tried new things and challenged ourselves, then our comfort zone would grow and those things would become second nature to us. And I've it's a simple lesson, but it clearly really stuck with me. I guess everyone has a different personalities, but I respond well to challenges and gamifying. I think that's a bit of a current trend word, gamifying my life. So I remember as a student and graduate, when I was going to networking events, I'd see who was in the room and I tell myself a couple of people that I was going to talk to before the end of the night. And then I would work out if one of my friends knew them to introduce them, or maybe I would just sort of awkwardly join the conversation. So I think it's just about being conscious about what you can challenge yourself to do, and aware of what your own barriers are and how you can seek out ways to knock them down.
Great advice. What I'm taking away from what you just said, and I can relate so much to it, is that I know you mentioned it and it helped definitely me, and it still does, to make not only plan, but make really diligent preparation for especially speaking to someone when you are kind of afraid. And I remember every time when I was unemployed and I was seeking for a job, every time that I not write an email, but I call someone to, you know, it might be cold calling or just following up on my application, something like that, I would write a script. So, and I would go over the script maybe a few times. especially if it was in a foreign language, right? I was based
Yes.
in Denmark, and it would be so much better if I spoke Danish. It would make
Yeah.
so much better impression, right? So I would just go over that script to get more confidence and get more prepared to what I was facing. So yes, taking away from you 2 tips: being intentional with every interaction you are going to have, whether it's online, offline, events, whatever it is. What is it? What's the intention you're coming into it with? And having that preparation, so you don't have to wing it, right? Because
yeah. I did the exact same thing preparing for my registration interview. I knew there was things they were going to pull on. And I think for about 2 weeks before the registration interview, whenever I was driving around, which is quite a lot where I live, I was just talking to myself in the car, pretending I was answering that question. And it's so powerful because when they did ask me, it all just sort of rolled off the tongue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, positive self-talk, right? Also, like imagining you're being interviewed and also being positive towards yourself and motivating yourself. It is underestimated, underappreciated. Also, affirmations and things like that that really just get your head straight when it comes to your ambitions and goals. So one last time, we can get free job seeker workbook from you. We can visit your website, myfirstarchitecturejob.com. We can check your membership for, it is called Architect Project, is that correct?
Yep. And the website for that is members.myfirstarchitecturejob.com.
Awesome. All the links will be linked under next to this video on this website. And I believe you also get a confirmation or reminder in the email if you're registered. And that was it. I think what is that? We haven't really mentioned your Instagram, and you're pretty active and engaging.
Yeah, it's sort of where most of it gets fed out. And I think this amazing event that you're running is proving the power of Instagram almost as this fantastic sort of learning environment that suits our attention span these days. So yes, first_archi_job over on Instagram.
Awesome. So to everyone listening and watching, make sure to really, again, squeeze this opportunity, reach out to people, reach out to your peers, reach out to your local communities, reach out to Sarah on her multiple channels, and share with us the key takeaways and answers to your challenges, how you get prepared to tackle your goals and ambitions. So once again, Sarah, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for your very insightful, generous presentation and your offers and all the bonuses that comes with it. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks, David. And thanks to everyone who watched as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in another webinar. Take care.